It's Friday, September 6th, Saturday, September the 7th in Vietnam, and we have a couple areas of interest to talk about today. The first one, of course, is going to be Typhoon Yagi, as the system is quickly coming towards the coastline of Taiwan. We'll talk about the Atlantic after this, but right now we're focusing on our typhoon. You can see that it's continuing to push west, now getting very close to the coastline of Vietnam. We had a very strong landfall in northern Hainan yesterday. Haven't really seen any reports of damage out of it, but it does look like the storm was stronger than anticipated when it came through. And hopefully the impacts were not as bad as anticipated there, although it was very strong, like I said. So you come to expect some bad impacts as the system came through there. But now we're seeing concerning signs as the system is coming further west towards northern Vietnam. The system is not really weakening all too much. We talked about over the past few days that the land interaction further east would be very important for northern Vietnam. If it interacted heavily with portions of China, it could weaken quite drastically, and we wouldn't get nearly as strong of a storm as we're getting right now coming into northern Vietnam. But this system really took a perfect path to avoid most of the disruption for land. It really only passed over this northeastern part of Hainan, and apart from that, not much land interaction at all. So this system's core is still well intact. You can see it here on this microwave pass from a few hours ago. This eye wall structure is formidable, and we may have some signs of maybe some kind of replacement cycle trying to start up. We do have a outer ring of thunderstorms surrounding this inner core, more than 50% around, but at this point it doesn't matter. The system's inner core is still likely to intensify in this pattern, as we're not fully in that onset of that replacement cycle yet, at least from this microwave pass, from what I can tell. And this could easily be a strong typhoon coming in. You can see on this forecast from the Joint Typhoon Warning Center, this is a significant uptick from what we had yesterday, showing this becoming, this would be a Category 4 equivalent on the Saffir-Simpson hurricane wind scale, on a scale of 1 to 5. So this would be getting back to Category 4 intensity, and this is a very strong typhoon, getting close again to super typhoon intensity as it comes into northern Vietnam. And at least for record keeping, I don't think we've had a typhoon come in this strong in northern Vietnam in the recorded records. So this will certainly be a significant storm for the region, and hopefully everyone's prepared ahead of it as the storm's coming in later today, as you can see on this current trajectory. Now, we're not only going to be dealing with the winds, we'll also be dealing with a lot of rainfall. You can see the GFS ensemble is depicting a wide region of 350 millimeters of rainfall or more. Especially where this inner core comes in, we could get rainfall totals that perhaps exceed 500 millimeters in some localized areas. You can see that highlighted there, mainly on the coast here in Vietnam. And of course, we'll also have a lot of storm surge here. This is a susceptible part of the coastline with this sort of a concave shape. And we're certainly going to have a lot of water be pushed in, especially as well to these bay areas here in northern Vietnam. Now, if we look at satellite imagery, it's a bit hard to tell exactly without radar data how close the eye wall would be to the coast. It does look like we are getting pretty close. You can see the coastline is here. In fact, I'll go to visible imagery so we can see those lines a little bit better. You can see here's the storm center, and here's the coastline in these more yellow orange-ish lines, and the eye wall is here. So it looks like we're getting very close to getting this eye wall on shore. So this is going to be a nasty next few hours here in northern Vietnam. Now, I don't really have much else to say about the system, as like I talked about yesterday, the forecasting phase of this storm is pretty much done. All I can really do is direct you to your local weather office and local emergency management for the best information as the storm comes through. And of course, stay safe as it comes through. Hopefully the system is not as strong as satellite estimates depict right now, but even if it is, hopefully the impacts aren't going to be nearly as bad as it pushes through. The good news is once it comes ashore, it should weaken fairly quickly, as there is some moderate wind shear impacting the system, but also that land interaction will do good at weakening it. But we could also get some significant rainfall moving further inland into Vietnam, as you can see on this rainfall forecast, and that could lead to some inland flooding issues. That's all that I've got for Typhoon Yagi. We're now going to move towards the Atlantic, as we have an increasing chance of development in the Gulf of Mexico. We still have several areas of interest across the Atlantic. A couple of them got axed today. We had Invest 99L, which is off the U.S. coast. This is a non-tropical system and is not expected to attain subtropical or tropical characteristics as it moves northeast, but it could bring some impacts to Atlantic Canada as it moves north, as it is intensifying right now. A pretty nice little comma-shaped cloud feature there on visible satellite imagery. We also had Invest 90L, which was sitting south of Houston and still is, but this system is draped within a frontal boundary. You can sort of see how stretched out all this thunderstorm activity is, pretty much from the Carolinas all the way down to Mexico, and this is likely to inhibit most tropical development from that specific disturbance over the next few days. However, we do have a tropical wave that's moving into the Gulf of Mexico this weekend. It's right now over Mexico. If we go to a closer view in the western Atlantic, you can see where the system is. You can see southeasterly flow coming into the eastern coast of the Yucatan Peninsula, and then we've got southerly flow in the Bay of Campeche moving into Mexico. And this highlights a wave axis that's generally over this portion of southern or southeastern Mexico. And this will be moving further northwest into the Bay of Campeche over the next few days. And the environment is forecast to be favorable for the system to develop. You can see the upper level pattern just from this satellite imagery alone. You have a lot of northeasterly flow across the Caribbean. This is from an upper level high pressure system that we have directly placed over the Gulf of Mexico, and this wave is going to be moving directly underneath this high, which will provide a low shear environment for the system. Now, there will be likely some difficulties with it as it moves into the Gulf. One issue that I could see is that we just have this large area of strung out vorticity, and that's this frontal boundary that Invest 90L is being swallowed by. And this could act in a way, and some models have tried to show this, if 90L remains a little bit stronger, it could act in a way to really keep a broad area of vorticity as these two vorticity maximums try and fight for dominance. And that could allow this, or not allow the system to really develop all too much as it tries to fight to become the dominant low, and that could make the system struggle developing over the next few days. Now, as of right now, the GFS is the most adamant on development. You can see as it moves into the Bay of Campeche, we get a broad area of low pressure, and on the GFS, 90L weakens quite a bit, and it ends up getting more absorbed into our disturbance, and that, in a way, helps it to develop, and this becomes a tropical storm on the model. Now, what the system also has going for it with the low shear environment is this part of the world can be pretty good at spinning up tropical cyclones like this. We have a lot of high terrain surrounding it pretty much on all sides in Mexico, and that can, in a way, help spin up vorticity with the system. And that could, by those topographic features, help the system develop into a tropical storm. Now, other models are not as adamant on this. I believe the European shows the scenario I mentioned where 90L is a little bit stronger. You can sort of see it there, and it just ends up, both of these areas of low pressure try and fight to become the dominant low. But in this model, none of them really become dominant. So you just have this large area of strung out thunderstorms and vorticity, and nothing really coherent forms out of it. And that's a possibility here. Now, chances of development right now are 50-50 from the NHC in the next 7 days. Next 2 days, about 30%. And we'll see if those odds come up anymore. They have come up pretty significantly throughout the day today, as it does seem like models are becoming, in general, a little bit more adamant on the system having that potential to develop. Now, regardless of development, we're likely going to see heavy rainfall continue along the Gulf Coast of Mexico and the U.S. You can see here on the Weather Prediction Center forecast, we could have a wide region of heavy rainfall stretching from Mexico all the way to the Florida Panhandle, and some of these totals are getting up to 7 or 10 inches of rain along these areas of the coastline. In areas further inland, this darker red is 2 to 3 inches of rain as the system comes north. So we could have a lot of flooding issues in these areas, because we've also gotten some significant rainfall over the past few days with 90L and the draped frontal boundary that it's entangled with right now. So a prolonged area of rainfall is expected regardless of development, but if we do get more development, it's possible the system could intensify a little bit. We could be increasing a wind impact here for the Gulf Coast of Mexico and the U.S. That's all that I've got for today. The rest of the Atlantic is still fairly quiet. We do have, you can sort of pick it out, this yellow area. Another area of interest out there. There is forecast to be a tropical wave coming off of Africa over the next week, and it may, as it moves west, may have a chance to develop as it comes west. But as of right now, that's far out, and models are kind of flip-flopping on that idea of exactly if it's going to develop or not. So we'll talk about that in the future if we need to. But that's all I've got for today. Stay safe in Vietnam as Typhoon Yagi comes through, and I'll have another video maybe tomorrow on our Atlantic disturbance. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.